John Fuller here, and we are back for more adventures in Fly Car, the adventures of none other than our pals, Eli Martin, Earl Murphy, and Grady. And it's only taken 12 chapters, but I really feel like I am hitting my groove on being able to tell this story. And before I go ahead and play a little song for you that I feel like captures the essence of the first part, we're going to do two parts to chapter 13, the resurrection. But I want to start off by asking you one simple question. What is your favorite movie? Well, when I was your age, my favorite movie, without question, without a shadow of a doubt, had to be Willy Wonka and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So here's Willy Wonka right here, and this is the 1971 version. I'm a little bit longer in the tooth than you guys are, but I remember seeing this as a young boy of about 8, 9 years old, and it just captured my imagination. Well, first of all, what kid doesn't like candy, doesn't like chocolate? And of course, so there's Willy Wonka. And then in addition to that, you've got your classic underdog, Charlie Bucket, who just is a poor kid and just barely getting by, but he's a dreamer and he is able to get the fifth and last golden ticket. But really, one scene that really captured my imagination was at the end when Charlie's the big winner. They go off in the glass elevator. And what was really cool about the glass elevator was that it would change your point of view. So the glass elevator goes up and over the town that Charlie lives in. Well, here's an example. So here's what you have, what we call a profile view. That's a profile view is just a fancy way of saying a side view of Mount Rainier. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and so Mount Rainier is really big. But here's the thing that's so interesting is that when you change the vantage point, this is called what we call a bird's eye view. A bird's eye view is when you are seeing something from the top down, the way that a bird would see it. So that's just kind of a cool idea, a cool concept, and that's what you're going to see today. What you're going to see today is you're going to see Eli Martin and Grady flying Fly Car, but something different's going to happen. Eli's going to be the one that's flying the car, and you'll get to see bird's eye view from a different vantage point, a different point of view. So now I'm going to go out and play a song, At Great Heights by Postal Service, that kind of captures, I feel like, the essence of this. Have a listen. Here come the lyrics.
I'm thinking it's a sign that the freckles in our eyes are mirror images, and when we kiss they're perfectly aligned. I have to speculate that God himself will make us into corresponding shapes like puzzle pieces from a puzzle. It may seem like a stretch, but it's thoughts like this that catch my troubled head when you're away, when I am missing you. When you are out there on the road for several weeks of shows, and when you scan the radio, I hope this song will guide you. They will see us waiting in such late heights come down. They'll say, everything is perfect from far away. Come down now, I will stay.
At Great Heights. So today we're going to go ahead and break down, as I mentioned before, chapter 13, the resurrection. And the resurrection can just be another way of thinking about making new. So making something new. So where we left off, well, Grady and Eli have a little work to do on resurrecting or making new the 1984 Martin Mecurio, or fly car. Eli's parents returned to Martin Manor early the next morning. His dad soon left for the office to get caught up on some much-needed paperwork. Eli smiled at his mom and welcomed her home. How lucky that this just happens to be Memorial Day weekend, he thought. Now we have an extra day to repair fly car. Grady and Eli met inside the barn at 8 a.m. Monday morning. Eli yawned broadly, still tired from last night's rescue mission. They both agreed that the car needed to be detailed. That way, it would at least have a consistent visual appearance both inside and out. Eli had read somewhere that if a cell phone just happens to go through the washing machine by accident, it could still be salvaged if it were immediately packed in rice as a way of drying out the battery. Could the same method be used to dry out Fly Car's engine? He convinced Grady to take him to the local warehouse superstore where he purchased 4 50-pound bags of rice and gently placed one after the other on the sides of the car's engine. On Tuesday after school, Eli raced home to see if his grand evaporation experiment had been successful. In the barn, he carefully removed the bags of rice from the car's engine and laid them next to the workbench in the corner. He was surprised how much heavier the rice seemed compared to the previous night. They'd clearly absorbed a fair amount of the pond water that had been in Fly Car's motor. Eli swept away the straw underneath the stairs of the concealed secret compartment, opened the cellar hatch, and grabbed the tackle box. He removed the magical silver key to Fly Car. Once more, he slid the driver's seat, slipped the key into the ignition, and cranked it in a clockwise motion. So cranking it means like this, the way that you start a car. The car responded with a sputtering sound, like an old-fashioned coffee pot percolating its brew. But that was all it would do. He turned the ignition off and then tried once again. "Come on, please work," he said, cranking the key. The car sputtered once more, then magically came back to life. Boom, boom, boom. Eli was never so thankful in his entire life. Grady entered the barn just in time to experience Fly Car showing signs of life. "Well, I'll be," Grady smiled at Eli, admiring his resourcefulness. That's not to say that there wasn't any damage to the vehicle. The right wing looked like an aluminum can that had been ripped in half and needed to be replaced. But that was a relatively minor procedure. Eli collected more cans for the necessary repairs, and Grady reworked the pulley system. After a couple of weeks, Fly Car was almost as good as new. The completion of the adjustments to the vehicle coincided nicely with Eli's promotion from elementary school. The graduation ceremony was held in Thomas Edison Gym. 3 rows of risers were set up, and Eli's parents and Grady came a bit early so they could find seats together. In front of the podium, bedecked with navy streamers and metallic gold stars, and next to it was a display of the graduating kids' pictures and their answers to this question: where will you be in 20 years? Eli had said he'd like to be an inventor, and a knowing grin started spreading across Grady's face when he saw the display. "Oh, I'll bet you will, Junior," he whispered under his breath. At the reception after the ceremony, Eli went up to Murph to offer him some lemonade and cookies. Murph had other celebration plans. He was taking the helium balloons off the gym wall, inhaling the inert gas, and then making comical high-pitched sounds like, "Hi, my name's Earl Murphy." Eli couldn't help but laugh at his best friend's goofy ways. Eli woke the next day, glad to be done with elementary school, as now he could work for most of the day on his dream of a flying car. He had a few new ideas about how to attain the necessary clearance over the wall of black gum trees. They were a menacing obstacle, as formidable as the Great Wall of China. Eli correctly reckoned that Flycar needed more propulsion and less weight to clear the grove of trees. Once more, he thought about jetpacks. Flycar didn't have much boost, he guessed. Just 30 seconds or less of additional propulsion would likely lift it 100 yards higher, and thus it could soar over the grove of gum trees. Grady agreed, so the pair began preparing the transformed car for the second test flight. This time, they equipped the underbelly of the vehicle with 2 mini rocket boosters, stocked with about 30 seconds worth of propellant, much like a Harrier aircraft. Eli was pleased with the first phase of the revisions for the new and improved Flycar. Phase 2 would not be so easy to implement, though. So he prepared this case like the best litigator, that's a certain kind of lawyer, money could buy. I've been looking at the weight calculations for Flycar, he said to Grady one day, and I think the next flight, the best chance of succeeding if there is only one person in the car, just the pilot, Eli said. Is that so? Grady asked. Yep, and since I weigh at least 60 pounds less than you do, well, give or take a few, I believe I should be the one to test Flycar. Is that right, Junior? So what do you think? What do I think? I don't like the sound of it one bit, but I agree with your analysis, Junior, Grady said reluctantly. I think if the weather holds, we should give it a go in the morning around 8 a.m. 8 o'clock it is. Eli couldn't sleep much that night, thinking about the test flight that lay ahead in the morning. Butterflies tickled in his stomach, just like they did on Christmas Eve. The black canvas of night gave way to pre-dawn indigo as Eli threw on his clothes. It made no sense for him to be up this early, yet there he was, awake with the paper boys, bread deliverers, and mail trucks making their early morning rounds. To calm his nerves, Eli pretended it was just another day. He went down to the kitchen and poured himself a bowl of cereal. He liked sugary cereal. It came in those colorful boxes, cartoon characters on the sides, and he completed the maze and the word search on the back of the box. After slurping down the last spoonful of sweetened milk, he rinsed out his bowl and placed his spoon on the drying rack. He opened the front door to check the weather. The sky was clear, with a coral hue that hugged and outlined the black grove of trees. The slight wind was blowing from the north, but all in all, it felt very manageable. Eli walked halfway around the circular driveway and grabbed the local newspaper off the cobblestones. He loved reading the cartoons, so he passed the next 30 minutes trying to clear his mind of the upcoming event and onto something a little more lighthearted. The bell on the grandfather clock rang 8 chimes. Boom, 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 signaling that it was time to go. Eli got up from the couch, put on his sneakers, and headed out through the mudroom to the back barn out back. Grady was waiting for him in the barn, and he greeted Eli with a cup of hot chocolate and whipped cream on top. Eli gulped it down, remembering the results of the first ride, as he garnered his courage to take the second flight. Working together, Grady and Eli maneuvered Flycar out the double doors of the barn and into and onto the lawn in one smooth motion, just as they had done a few weeks before. Eli slipped into the driver's seat, fastened his seatbelt, and switched on the ignition. Vroom, vroom. He pressed the wing control button, And the doors quickly responded by rocking into position. First forward and then back. Eli touched the button a second time. Boink. And the wingtips extended out. Ding, 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 ding. To create a very convincing aircraft. The plexiglass sliders filled the previous void where the car doors had once been, and it just took a few moments. Eli was ready for takeoff. He reluctantly gunned the gas pedal all the way down to the floor. The car accelerated rapidly through the field, and the speedometer increasing 10 miles per hour every 10 yards. Eli gently pulled back on the steering wheel and felt the front tires calmly lifting off the ground. Be patient, he thought to himself, when he felt the black tires separate from the lawn. He instinctively pressed the brand new propulsion button right by the turn signal. Flycar responded immediately with a quick burst of thrust and lifted upward about 100 feet, clearing the black gum grove of trees easily. The trees swayed in delight as the car flew over them in the early morning air. Eli banked the car ever so slightly to his left. Banking means turning, so he's turning ever so slightly. He gave a quick wave to Grady, who was looking up from the lawn with a pair of binoculars. He responded with a thumbs up before quickly setting down the field glasses and picking up the video recorder to capture this moment. Eli's heart surged with pride as he looped around the suburban neighborhood in Flycar. He had a picture-perfect bird's-eye view from the top down of Thomas Edison Elementary School. He could clearly see Mrs. Fitzgerald's fifth-grade classroom in the neighborhood playground, right next to the grass baseball field where he had saved the day with the snow cone catch. A few weeks earlier, Eli had been a mediocre student in fifth grade, and now he was on the cusp of something big, big, big. He noticed Murph's white craftsman home jutting out from behind a tree-lined street of maples. Eli's world seemed small when he was soaring above it all in his latest invention. He had a newfound sense of perspective. Anything is possible, he thought. After making the 5-minute loop around town, Eli decided to return to Martin Manor. He had read the Greek myth of Daedalus and Icarus, a father and son who tried to flee prison with wings made of wax and feathers. Daedalus warned his son not to fly too close to the sun, lest his waxy wings would melt. Unfortunately, his son didn't heed his father's advice. That means to listen. And tragically, he fell into the ocean, never to be seen or heard from again. Eli trusted Grady's words and cautioned him to not push his luck, and was sure he didn't want to tempt fate. So I want to show you this really quickly. Here's what we're talking about on bird's eye view. Here is Eli waving from the top down to his buddy Grady. Bird's eye view. Eli banked Flycar back toward home and began the descent to the grassy field. He kept the wings as straight as he possibly could while reducing his speed. He placed the flaps in the downward position, which slowed down the car and lowered his overall altitude and acceleration. Eli had played Flight Simulator before many times, but this was the real deal. He was actually landing this car, or was it an aircraft now? He didn't know. Flycar continued to soar toward home. The wheels and wings cleared the row of trees. Eli noticed Old Man Murphy's pond in the 3 o'clock position. When he was 50 yards to contact, he cut the engine and glided down safely to the ground below. He had accomplished his mission. Eli turned off the ignition. punched the wing control button twice, and there stood Flycar safely in the middle of a perfectly manicured lawn. Grady came over to congratulate him on the successful flight, but he couldn't move. He was sitting frozen inside the driver's seat. "Come on, champ. You did it. You did it. I can't believe it." "I can't move." Eli had his hands clasped on the wheel like a wax figure in a museum. "You can do this, son," Grady began, peeling back one finger after another on Eli's hand. When he had removed all 10, he proceeded to unbuckle the seatbelt and pivot Eli out of the vehicle by rotating his legs. Just then, Eli's dad sauntered from around the barn and up behind Grady and Eli. "So what exactly are you two doing with my car?" And with that, we'll stop on part 1 of chapter 13, The Resurrection.